Hey, everybody, welcome back to Practical Liberty. Sorry I missed last week. I have been, for the past 3 weeks, basically, recording videos nonstop for my new course, Breaking Free, how to create a high income freedom career. It's all about freelancing and how to get kind of out of the machine, which is the entire original purpose of this podcast. So I thought I'd take this week because I didn't have a ton of time to prepare any new content and talk about myself. I realize I haven't done a ton of that on this podcast in the past. I've done little bits here and there, but I guess people don't have the full picture of my story and how I got to where I am. So, I mean, starting the beginning, I was born in Reading, Pennsylvania back in 1985. And I was born to kind of a low income household at the time. But, everybody in Reading was poor. So it didn't seem that strange. I guess I want to give you the negatives and the positives, and the positives probably far outweigh the negatives. So, I was born to a complete family, a two-parent household with a loving mother and father. I was raised as a Christian kid. I was taken care of. I did Little League, Boy Scouts, all the typical, 90s kid type stuff. So in that way, I had an advantage over a lot of people. So if you don't know Reading, at one point, it was the murder capital of the United States, in that we had just a ton of gang-related shootings. And there were parts where, it didn't feel that unsafe. Like I was allowed to go out and play in the park by myself, which is, a block from my house. But also the first time I had a knife held to my neck, I was 11 years old. I had people try to kill me several times in my life. Like one dude tried to kill me because he thought I ratted on him for smoking cigarettes to his mom, which of course I'd never done. But the other part of that was you learn to not rat. So, um, not a lot of people, like I wasn't telling my parents when I had knives and guns pulled on me, which happened basically every year until I graduated high school. So there was some violence. Another thing that was a big event in my life when I was 8 years old, actually at my 8th birthday party, I threw a string bean at my cousin and she threw a fork back at me and it got stabbed in my left eye, which is, if you've ever wondered why I have two different colored eyes, it's because I have an artificial lens and pupil in this eye. So I had some trauma, and I also had a relatively stable, loving family. So, there's positives and negatives. My whole point here is just that, like, you don't know what people's background is, but people's background, people's struggles early in life, people's advantages early in life, it's not indicative of their future success. Really, it's personality type and willpower and experience and knowledge. It's desires. It's how hard are you willing to fight for what you want. So anyway, I did end up going, I went to public high school. I graduated relatively near the top of my class, which high school was a joke to me. I didn't take it seriously, but it was also really easy. And honestly, it wasn't that hard for me to graduate near the top of my class when half the kids in the class didn't speak English. It was a big school, but, a lot of immigrants. We had a 50% dropout rate. Just not a very engaged public school. So the class ranking can be deceiving. I'm not trying to claim to be the smartest kid that ever went to a public school. But I did go to college. I got a degree in fiction writing from the University of Pittsburgh, which turns out in hindsight is not the most practical degree in the world. And so my first job out of college was as a flight attendant. Now, I actually kind of liked being a flight attendant. It was really cool for a 22-year-old to get flown all over the world. My first trip was to Munich for Oktoberfest. It was the opening day of Oktoberfest. And I got kind of drunk and probably I barely hit the cutoff for alcohol to be able to fly home the next day. And I'm saying that for legal reasons. Anyway, it was a good time. I got to go all over the world. But flight attendants, I was living with 3 different roommates in Herndon, Virginia, making $21,000 a year. So my dad had been running a supplement company when I was growing up, and he had found this, he had taken this course on copywriting as a way to kind of sell more supplements. And so he kind of came to me and said, you're a writer. This course sounds interesting and we're not using it. So do you want to try it? And at first I had said no back when I was in college because I had this idea that I was this pure artist person and I was going to write the next great American novel. But that didn't quite work out. I actually wrote a novel. It's in the drawer. I will never show it to anybody. I've reread it recently because somebody said it's probably not as bad as you think. No, it's actually worse than I remember. So 22-year-olds shouldn't be writing novels unless they're prodigies. But anyway, I was good at writing, whether or not I was good at putting together a story back then. So he gave me this course on copywriting. And at first I used it to kind of launch my own product. I had a product out there for, I don't know, like 3 months. I tried to sell it. It was called The Insider's Guide to Stress-Free Flying. I created an ebook and I was trying to sell it back. This was back in 2007 or 8 about basically insider secrets on flying, but I didn't know anything about media buying. I didn't know anything about upsells or profit margins. I was this dumb kid just out of college that his only work experience was as a flight attendant. So that kind of bombed, but I got very interested in copywriting. So I started doing freelance copywriting on the side just as a way to earn a couple $100 here and there. And I started getting gigs relatively early on. One of my first clients, I got 2 clients about the same time. The very first client I think I got was, I went to a conference on web copywriting. Now you have to realize this was back in 2008, I think. And internet copywriting was technically a new thing back then. Most copywriters that were freelance copywriters were old school direct mail guys, people selling things on the internet. I know it sounds strange because it's only 15 years ago. It was new. People hadn't really entirely figured it out yet. But there was this whole conference on web copywriting, and one of the presenters there was talking about pay-per-click ads, these Google pay-per-click ads, and how you could use them to get people on an email list, and then you could sell people on your email list things. Revolutionary concept at the time. But so I had been on, when I was in college, Facebook came out. And so I knew that Facebook had just started releasing their advertising program. Now, at the time, nobody had really figured out how to do Facebook ads because Facebook's advertising program had not even remotely caught up to Google's. But I went to the organizers of it and I said, hey, I know, I bought from you from an ad to come here. And so I know you run these ads. Now you just taught me how to use these pay-per-click stuff. Why don't I try to campaign for you using Facebook ads instead with that same program that you use for Google ads, but we'll use Facebook ads instead. And they thought that was a good idea. So they hired me. And I think I got $500 for my first campaign. And then I was like, oh, this is great. This is easy. And I went and I got another client to write a sales letter for $1,500. And that was right out of the gate. So I thought, I was the hottest thing. I thought this freelancing thing was the easiest way to make money in the world. So I randomly just quit my my job at the airline and I started freelancing full time. And that was a tragic mistake. I quickly went super broke, not just broke. So I ran up $20,000 in credit card debt. I moved back to Pennsylvania. I had been living in Virginia. I moved back to Pennsylvania, which is the only reason I didn't get my car repossessed because the company had no idea where to find me. I missed paying, I was renting a room from my cousin at the time and I missed paying him like every other month for a while. I was just randomly sneaking to my parents' house to, I'd show up at mealtime and just say, oh, hey, what's going on? Because I couldn't afford food. I was so depressed. I thought I had done the dumbest thing ever. But I was also too proud to quit and go find a real job and dig myself out of this hole and admit that this freelancing thing is stupid. And I got conned by some internet marketing company who randomly paid me back $500 of the $1,500 I spent on their conference. But I decided I needed to make it work. And so I did nothing for basically, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for the first year and a half of my career, but try and figure out how to make this work. Now, here was the mistake I made in the very beginning of my career. I chose freelance copywriting as a freelance career. And I spent all of my time trying to get good at copywriting, which is not bad. You need to be good at the skill you're freelancing with, right? And I got to be a pretty good copywriter. I wasn't the best for a while, but I got good enough to be, when I did something, it started to perform. I learned from my mistakes and I moved forward. But the thing I didn't realize early on is that the freelance copywriting is actually 2 things, right? It's the freelancing and the copywriting. The freelancing is a separate skill from the copywriting. And it took me a long time, like a year and a half, to figure out that I shouldn't just focus on the copywriting part. I need to focus on the freelancing part if I'm ever going to make money with this. And so that's what I really started doing. Now, in the beginning, I took a couple freelance online courses. Actually, no, they weren't online. They were workbooks that people sent you through the mail. Because remember, most of the freelancers in the early days were old school direct response copywriters. They were old school graphic designers. They were journalists. Freelancing was not quite what it is today. I think back when I started, only 30% of the country had ever done any freelancing. And by 2027, I think it's projected to be over 50% of the country is full-time freelance. So that doesn't sound like a huge jump, but it's actually enormous. But anyway, I followed the advice that was in these old courses, and it didn't work for me. And that advice was like cold calling. It was sending direct mail packages to potential clients. And I was determined to make this work. So the advice I got, and it wasn't bad advice, really, it was to call up companies and say, do you hire freelancers? And if they said yes, say, great, can I send you an information packet? And then you'd send them an information packet with a bunch of different samples. And then the theory was that eventually, you'd have to do this a few times, but maybe one out of every 50 or 60 people you'd call would hire you. And that's enough to sustain a freelance career. You don't need a ton of clients when it's high paying freelance work. But I did it. And I called 100 people, and a handful of them said, yes, they use freelancers. And no, it's adorable that you're trying, but we don't need your information packet. Thank you very much. Also, this was 2008. So it was the middle of the Great Recession, and a lot of people were trying to save money. They weren't going to take a leap. They weren't going to branch out and see if this unproven person that just randomly called them on the phone was going to give was worth their money. I had to pretty quickly, and it took me way too long. I admit it was a year and a half, 2 years of slaving away in the basement, maybe scraping in a client here or there, before I really figured out what I was doing. And I kind of figured it out by accident. I ended up going to a copywriting conference at the time. And, I had this whole information packet thing that I thought was going to work, right? It was that same information packet I was doing the cold calling with. And eventually, I made this random connection at a bar with a person who I didn't think I had to impress at all, because it was just a client that was going to be way out of my league. So they were never going to hire me. And I had a random conversation with them. And at the end of it, they ended up hiring me. And so I kind of reflected on that for a while. And I thought, what did I do there that made him want to hire me? And I came up with a couple ideas, and I repeated it. And from there, my freelance career just took off. I went from $20,000 when I was 23 years old in freelance income, which was not nearly enough to cover my bills, especially because I had spent like $10,000 on training and courses and stuff that year. I spent all my money reinvesting in learning copywriting, which again, it was very valuable. And a lot of those copywriting training courses have paid off. But I also didn't have the skill of freelancing. So I was unbalanced in my career. But anyway, I think the third year of my career, I made just over $100,000. And that was from one freelancing trick, one client getting trick. Now, part of it was because I had put in the time to be good at the copywriting, but I was just mind blown. Anyway, I kept doing that, and eventually I learned to scale my career. Basically, after I got that first client, I got some momentum, and I had a 6-figure year, a lot of opportunities opened up. And I got a lot of mentors that, honestly, most of what I know is learned from experience, but experience that I got from being introduced to things from mentors and fellow freelancers. So I can't take credit for being the smartest person in the world. I figured out a bunch of different tricks for freelancing, but I also learned a lot more than I figured out that other people have shown me. My freelance career grew because of those mentors. I've had some amazing clients. I got to work with Jed Canty, one of my great mentors and good friends. Mark Ford was a good mentor. I eventually became friends with Clayton Makepeace, who became kind of a mentor to me. Honestly, I got to become friends with most of the, really good copywriters that I had looked up to when I was coming up, which was just, it's an amazing career arc to think that I was this poor little kid from Reading, Pennsylvania, trying to run away from getting stabbed when I'm 11 through 17. And then all of a sudden, here I am hobnobbing with the top copywriters of the world. And eventually I'm starting to work on celebrity projects with Joe Montana and Steve Harvey and Damon John and Steve Forbes. And all of a sudden, it's just amazing how your life can transform, but you have to be able to take control of it. I don't think I would have had any of these opportunities if I had taken the quote unquote safe path of an employee. But it was pretty obvious to me when I was starting my career. I graduated college in 2007, right into the Great Recession. No career looked safe. And my attitude as a kid, I was always the kid that hated being told what to do, which is honestly why I got in a lot of trouble. If I hadn't been hanging out with drug dealers and some other people, I probably would have had my life threatened so much when I was young. But I hate rules. I hate being told what to do. I hate having a boss. Part of the reason I hate the government. I want to be free. I want to live life on my own terms. And I've always done everything I could to make sure that happens. Now, obviously, a lot of responsibility comes along with that. And I don't hang out with drug dealers anymore. Well, no, I invested in a bunch of marijuana companies. So I hang out with only legal drug dealers these days. But my life is what I want it to be these days. I live up in the mountains on 15 acres. It's a fully paid off house. I work when I want. I hang out with who I want. I don't have to associate with people I don't like. I never had to get any medications that other people might have been forced to get. So I was making 7 figures a year as a freelancer. So my career trajectory was just phenomenal, honestly. I went from nothing to $100,000 my third year in business. Then my fifth or sixth year, I was making $500,000. And 2016 through 2020, I was averaging 750 to 1.4 million, I think was the range that I hit. It was an amazing life, and I loved it. And then there was a unannounced emergency event that kind of took over the world. And I saw how authoritarian governments can get and how quickly they can get that way. And I thought, I was selling mostly health and financial products. So I was selling weight loss and dietary supplements and protein powders. And then I was selling services that were like recommending stocks and options and trading services, stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with selling any of that stuff. I'm not ashamed of anything I sold in the past. In the more recent past, some of the early projects I worked on probably shouldn't have. But in the more recent past, when I kind of matured and realized what I was doing, and I had the ability to be very selective about clients, I was a supporter of all those clients. But I don't think you make too much of an impact on the world by selling supplements and weight loss programs and financial products. You make a difference in some people's lives. With the health stuff, honestly, there's a bigger impact. With the financial stuff, what you're doing is making rich people richer. So I wanted to help people become more free in their own life, because I realized that if we're ever going to have a successful liberty movement in this country, we need people who have the ability to stand up, and they don't have to be terrified of losing a job, of being scorned on the internet, of reputational damage, because they have the financial independence, they have the security, they have the awareness to do what they want to do. This is why I preach the 4 cornerstones of liberty on this podcast: security, wealth, awareness, and network. Those are the 4 things that make you free in this world. The thing that I'm the best at teaching, the best at demonstrating how to do, and really helping people with, is the wealth. And by wealth, I really mean income. I can talk about investing. I can talk about what I've done with investing. I've done a lot of angel investing. I've done some public market investing. But basically, my best public market investing is just indexing the markets. So I don't know. The investing piece is not something that I'm going to be able to teach. But how to make a high income is something I know very, very well. And that's why I launched the program Breaking Free, which has been kind of what I've been obsessed with for the past few weeks. Now, there's something kind of funny about this, in that, I was one of the best copywriters working. And if I saw how I was launching this program, I would probably smack myself. If I had hired me as a consultant, I'd be doing things differently. But my point here is actually not to maximize for revenue, at least not initially. I'm going to try and scale this thing, and I'm going to sell it to hopefully a much broader audience, because I believe in what I'm teaching. Look, this is 15 years of distilled knowledge in how to become a high-paid freelancer. It's not like I was born knowing how to do this. I made every mistake in the book, and I suffered terribly in those early days. It was extremely painful. I thought about quitting every day. The only reason I didn't is because I was so freaking proud that I had told people I was doing this, and I was too proud to go back on my word. So I made a ton of mistakes, and I figured out a lot of stuff, and I've learned a lot of lessons along the way. And I think I figured out a lot of things that other freelancers haven't. Look, I'm not the best copywriter in the world. I'm good at it, but I'm not the best. There are people that are just naturally amazing writers. But I'm really good at freelancing. I'm really good at basically figuring out how to position myself, figuring out how to get clients, figuring out how to negotiate with clients to get extremely high fees, figuring out how to manage clients in a way that they love you, that it would break their heart if they had to part ways with you. And then figuring out afterwards kind of how to scale that. And so that's what I'm teaching. That's actually the 4 modules in the course. So the first is preparing to break free, which is basically just getting ready. What do you need to know to start a freelance career? And how do you know when you're ready to launch it and take it full time? it's not as easy, or it's not as straightforward as you think. And I don't recommend people quit their job right away, right? You can do this as a side hustle for a little bit. It doesn't take that much time. You can feel it out, and you can actually be very secure when you go full-time in freelancing. So I want to show people how to do that. In the second module, I'm showing people, this is all about getting clients, right? If you don't get clients, you don't have a freelance career. So I figured out a bunch of, like, they seem so simple, but when I tell them to people, it clicks in their head and they go, oh, is that what I've been doing wrong? So I have stuff like how to create a viral pitch, which gets you in front of it. It's a statement that you can craft that gets other people to give you warm introductions to your perfect clients. I teach you where to get bigger and better clients. I teach you how to upgrade clients. Well, once you outgrow a client, and look, this is not about just dumping a client, kicking him to the curb. If you're going to have a long freelance career, you don't want a trail of burnt clients behind you. You don't want a trail of angry people. So I teach you how to break up with a client in a way that actually makes them think highly of you and actually helps them recommend you to people that could be even better clients than they were. And then the managing clients part, look, people don't know how to act professionally. It's amazing to me that some freelancers have careers, but they have, high six-figure careers, and they're terrible at handling their clients. Their clients are grumpy at them all the time. Sometimes it's because sometimes they keep them because that freelancer has a good skill. Sometimes they keep them because of inertia. But look, if the markets start collapsing and the economy gets hard, no clients are going to keep you around because of inertia. So you need to know how to manage a client. You need to understand the difference between a boss and a client, which is a huge difference. A lot of freelancers I've seen, they just get treated like employees by their clients. That is not at all how a freelance relationship should work. You are basically equal professionals with different skill sets. The reason they hire you is for your skill set. They are not your boss. They are not your owner. They don't get to tell you what to do. You negotiate and agree on what to do. Speaking of negotiation, I go through my 5-step process, and it's literally, there's a script in there. The 5 steps I go through of how to negotiate a outrageously high fee compared to other freelancers that could be considered your competition. In the early modules, I teach you how to build your skill stack. The skill stack, I've talked about this before a couple times on the podcast. The concept comes from Scott Adams' talent stack before Scott Adams went crazy. And it's basically the unique combination of things you do that set you apart. Now, a lot of people have a lot of skills and talents that they don't recognize. So I have an exercise in there for showing you how to find your talents, how to find your skills, how to align them with your interests to create a career path and a skill stack that's not just like sustainable, but enjoyable. You're going to love your work. You're going to look forward to doing it, and you're going to set yourself apart. You're going to have no competition because nobody else will be able to do exactly what you do. And then I talk about scaling your career. So how to get to that higher 6-figure income, how to potentially get to 7-figure income. If you're, it takes a while to get 7-figure income. I don't want to pretend like you're just going to become a millionaire overnight from this. I didn't become a millionaire till I was 31, I think. And I didn't make $1 million income till I was 33, 34. So it's not overnight. That was 10 years or so of work before I got there. But it's 10 years that most people would be willing to put in. And it was 10 years of adventure and hanging out with celebrities and doing these cool promotions and shooting on location and meeting all kinds of amazing people in the entrepreneurial and freelance world. So, it was totally worth it for me. I cannot imagine going back to an employee type life. That's just, there's nothing wrong with being an employee, right? Most people are employees. Most people do work that's okay, that pays okay. And they have passions and hobbies and interests outside of work. And that's fine. These are the people that keep society running. I have nothing but respect for people that work hard and put food on their table and, don't hurt anybody else and don't try to take anything from anybody. But there is a different type of person. And that person, they can't do work that doesn't have meaning to them. It just sucks the soul out of their body if they have to like grind day after day away at something that's just whatever. And these are the people that move society forward. The only way to be happy is working for yourself if you're that second type of person. And I just found that I was that second type of person. It's my personality. No judgment if it's not yours, but I think a lot of people out there would be much happier if they went freelance, and they'd be much more secure. I've talked about this before, but like if you have a job, that's one client. It's the same thing as having one client as a freelancer. If you lose your job, all of a sudden you lose everything. As a freelancer, if you lose one client, you've lost, a third, a quarter of your income, maybe, and you probably have a queue of people behind them that you can replace them with. Plus, because you're not dependent on employer benefits or health insurance, because you've had to figure that stuff out on your own, it hasn't just been handed to you through an employer, you're actually way less destabilized when you lose a client than if you lose a full employment job. So anyway, this program is live now. Literally, I think this program gives people the tools to, depending on their job, but it gives a lot of people the tools to double, triple their income, have more freedom in their life, enjoy what they're doing more, make a bigger difference in the world. So when I start launching with affiliates and outside lists, probably in June, I'm going to be charging $9.95 for the program. But because this is the early days and I'm still technically building it out, and I'm building it out with the feedback of the people that are the early members. So people are requesting clarifications in video modules. So I'm constantly adding to this. I'm constantly adding bonuses and making this as valuable as possible for new freelancers and experienced freelancers who want to grow their income. So my initial launch price is $4.95. So up until it's fully built out and I'm fully ready to launch with a big promo and all that stuff, I'm selling it for $4.95. But because this is the beta launch and I want to get a big rush of people in, basically to build out a bunch of success stories so I can use those success stories as testimonials to convince more people that this is the lifestyle they should be taking. You know, I make more money, more people get free lives. It's a win-win. I'm doing a 50% off for the first people that buy the course. So up until Monday, April 3rd at midnight, the course is 50% off that already reduced $4.95 price. So that's $247.50 for lifetime access to the material that's in there now, every bonus module that gets added, every new lesson I put in there for the rest of the duration, as long as this course exists. So if you want to find out more about this, just go to henrybing.co/breakingfree. That's all one word. I'll put the link on the screen and the link in the show notes. Again, this 50% off thing, that's only going to last till April 3rd at midnight. There's already way more value in this course than that. So I think that's the steal of a lifetime. You'll get lifetime access. And, you know, if you're interested in living a free life, if you're interested in independence, you know, if you're a liberty-minded person, getting out of under the boot of a boss, especially if you don't like your boss, it's going to be life-changing for you. It's going to change your perspective on work, on the world, on your ability to be free. You know, the podcast is called Practical Liberty, and freelancing is one of the most practical things you can do to become more free. So I hope you join me inside the course. If not, I hope you found some value or some entertainment in kind of my story. Again, that link is henrybing.co/breakingfree, and I'll talk to you next week. Till then, stay free.